The void of space crackled with violet energy as the damaged Etherian vessel limped toward Outpost Helios, trailing a glittering nebula of coolant and debris. Chief Engineer Kaida Nakamura dropped her calibration tool mid-adjustment when the emergency klaxons blared through the station. She'd been monitoring unusual radiation signatures for weeks, but nothing had prepared her for the sight that greeted her in the observation deck, a biomechanical ship unlike any in the Alliance database, its crystalline hull pulsing with failing bioluminescence. Unidentified vessel, this is Outpost Helios. State your intentions. Captain Freya Lindholm's voice remained steady despite the unprecedented situation unfolding before them. The response came not as words but as a cascade of mathematical equations projected directly into the station's systems. Kaida leaned forward, her augmented reality interface translating the complex symbols faster than the station's computers. "It's not an attack," she whispered, brushing a strand of midnight black hair from her face. "It's a plea for help." Within hours, the diplomatic bay had been converted to accommodate the Etherians' unique atmospheric needs. Kaida stood transfixed as the first delegation emerged from their transport pod, tall, willowy beings with opalescent skin that shifted colors with their emotions. Their central figure, introduced as Vraxtol, possessed 6 upper limbs that moved with hypnotic precision as he spoke through the translation matrix. "We are the last," his words echoed with a musical resonance that the translation couldn't fully capture. "The void scourge has consumed our home system and 17 colonial worlds. We number fewer than 30,000 now." Dr. Amara Okafor, the station's chief xenobiologist, leaned toward Kaida. "Their biochemistry is unlike anything I've ever seen. Silicon-carbon hybrid structures, photosynthetic neural pathways." But Kaida barely heard her colleague. Her attention was fixed on the holographic display Vraxtol had activated, a cosmic abomination that defied conventional physics. The void scourge appeared as a tear in spacetime that consumed energy and matter alike, leaving absolute darkness in its wake. It moved with purpose, as though hunting the Etherians specifically. "Our scientists developed temporal shielding to slow its advance," explained Shaymira, the Etherians' lead scientist, her skin pulsing with deep indigo sorrow. "But each deployment weakens the barriers between dimensions. We estimate 3 more planetary shields before catastrophic multiversal collapse." Captain Lindholm's expression hardened. "I'll contact Alliance Command, but you should know that bureaucratic wheels turn slowly, especially for non-member species." "We don't have time for protocols," Kaida interrupted, earning a sharp glance from her superior. "The energy signatures I've been tracking, they match what we're seeing in their data. The scourge has already entered our sector." The observation deck fell silent. Vraxtol's skin shifted to a pale, ghostly white. "Then it followed us. We have brought destruction to your doorstep as well." Kaida studied the Etherian data again, her mind racing through possibilities, equations forming and dissolving in her thoughts. Their temporal shielding concept was brilliant but fundamentally flawed, like trying to stop a tsunami with a series of increasingly fragile dams. "What if we don't try to block it?" she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "What if we redirect it instead?" "Impossible," stated Koldren, the Etherian military commander. "The scourge cannot be manipulated. It consumes all energy directed toward it." "Not if we use its own momentum against it," Kaida replied, her fingers already flying across her interface, sketching preliminary designs. "A dimensional fold rather than a shield." Captain Lindholm cut her off. "Nakamura, this isn't your decision to make. Alliance protocol clearly states." "With respect, Captain," Kaida stood her ground, "by the time Alliance scientists study this, both our species could be consumed. I've been theorizing about transdimensional mechanics for years. This is practically what my thesis was about." "And you believe you can succeed where an entire civilization of beings more technologically advanced than humans has failed?" Lindholm's tone was skeptical. Shaymira moved forward, her skin shifting to a curious amber. Our approaches are formed by our evolutionary history. Perhaps we need a different perspective. Vraxtel studied Kaida with multifaceted eyes that seemed to peer directly into her soul. You would risk yourself for a species not your own? Kaida thought of Earth, of humanity's long history of facing extinction and somehow surviving against the odds. Of her own family's history, surviving the Tokyo cataclysm and rebuilding from ashes. Sometimes the most elegant solutions come from those with the least resources, she said quietly. Humans have been turning disadvantages into advantages throughout our entire history. It's practically our specialty. She extended her hand toward the alien leader in a universal gesture of agreement, not knowing if the Etherians shared such customs. After a moment's hesitation, Vraxtel extended one of his upper limbs, wrapping elongated fingers around her hand. Then we accept your help, Kaida Nakamura of Earth, he said, his skin glowing with the faintest trace of hope. Though I must warn you, those who oppose the Void Scourge have not survived to attempt a second solution. The Etherian research vessel Luminous Harmony hung in space like an iridescent tear, its crystalline hull absorbing and refracting the light of distant stars. Kaida stood before its central navigation chamber, mesmerized by the living technology that surrounded her. Unlike human ships with their rigid interfaces and mechanical systems, the Etherian vessel seemed to breathe, pulsing with bioluminescent light that responded to its operator's thoughts and emotions. Your technology is extraordinary, she whispered as Shamira guided her through the ship's neural pathways. Biomechanical integration at the quantum level. The Etherian scientist's skin rippled with modest violet. Yet it failed to save us from the scourge. Our greatest achievement was the temporal displacement shield. She gestured to a spiraling structure at the heart of the chamber. It creates a localized time dilation field, essentially pushing the Void Scourge's advance into the future. Buying time by literally creating more of it, Kaida nodded. Brilliant, but unsustainable. Precisely. Each deployment weakens the boundaries between dimensions. Our last shield collapsed after only 17 hours. Matteo Valles, Kaida's fellow engineer from Outpost Helios, whistled low as he studied the Etherian data crystals. The energy requirements alone should be impossible. How are you generating that much power? Shamira's skin darkened. We harvest the energy released during a star's death. The process requires sacrifice. The unspoken implication hung heavy in the air. Kaida realized the Etherians had been destroying their own stars to power their defensive measures, a desperate strategy that left their remaining populations with nowhere to go. Koldren entered the chamber, his military bearing evident in his rigid posture. Time grows short. Our sensors detect the Scourge's approach accelerating. It will reach the human outpost within 14 cycles. Less than a week, Matteo translated grimly. Kaida immersed herself in the Etherians' technical data, trying to understand the fundamental nature of their enemy. The Void Scourge defied conventional physics. It wasn't simply consuming energy, but unwriting the very fabric of existence, leaving nothing behind, not even empty space. It's not destruction, she murmured, the realization dawning. It's erasure. Complete quantum decoupling from our universe. Yes, confirmed Zithlara, the Etherian cultural historian who had joined them. Her ancient eyes reflected thousands of years of accumulated wisdom. In our oldest texts, we have a concept called unbeing, to be removed not just from existence but from having ever existed at all. The Etherian scrolled through a series of complex equations. Our ancestors theorized that our universe exists alongside countless others, separated by dimensional membranes. The Scourge appears to be a tear in that membrane, exposing our reality to nothingness. Kaida's mind raced. Then your temporal shields were actually pushing against the membrane, reinforcing it. Temporarily, Shamira agreed. But each deployment thins the membrane further, accelerating the eventual catastrophic failure. Kaida paced the chamber, her thoughts crystallizing. What if instead of fighting against the tear, we work with it? Create a controlled fold in space-time that redirects the Scourge back upon itself? The Etherians exchanged glances, their skin shifting through colors of confusion and skepticism. Impossible, stated Koldren flatly. The scourge consumes all energy directed toward it. Not if we don't direct energy at it, Kaida countered. What if we create a dimensional lens? Something that bends spacetime around the scourge rather than trying to block it. The physics are sound, Matteo said slowly, working through the calculations on his datapad. But the engineering challenges are immense. We'd need materials that don't exist yet, Kaida corrected. Materials that don't exist yet. She turned to Shamira. Your crystalline technology, it responds to thought and emotion, doesn't it? It's not just mechanical. Correct. Our technology evolved alongside us, a symbiotic relationship dating back millions of years. Then it might be adaptable in ways traditional materials aren't, Kaida said, excitement building. Humans have always excelled at improvisation, at using technologies in ways they weren't designed for. She began sketching a design on her interface, a massive crystalline lens that would fold space rather than simply shield it. The mathematics were daunting, requiring concepts that pushed beyond current theoretical physics. This is unorthodox, Vraxtel said, having silently entered the chamber. His skin flickered with uncertainty. You propose to save us using our own technology, reimagined through human perspective? Exactly. Your temporal shields were brilliant, but they worked against the nature of the scourge. This design works with it, redirecting rather than resisting. Dr. Amara Okafor studied the design with scientific skepticism. The theoretical foundation is fascinating, but untested. We'd be gambling the survival of two species on an unproven hypothesis. Sometimes that's all science has, Kaida replied softly. A hypothesis and hope. Vraxtel's skin shifted to a deep, resolute blue. We have lost 23 worlds to caution and conventional approaches. Perhaps it is time for the unconventional. He turned to Kaida. What resources do you require? Before she could answer, the ship's alarms blared. Koldren rushed to the sensor array, his skin paling to a ghostly white. The scourge has changed course, he announced, his voice tight with controlled fear. It's moving directly toward us, faster than we've ever recorded. Almost as if it knows we're planning something, Shamira finished, her voice barely audible. How long do we have? Kaida asked, dread settling in her stomach. At current acceleration? Koldren's skin had gone completely colorless. Less than 72 hours. The makeshift laboratory aboard the luminous Harmony hummed with frenetic energy as Kaida and Shamira worked in symbiotic harmony. Human determination and Etherian intuition blended as they manipulated the ship's living crystals, attempting to create a prototype of Kaida's dimensional lens design. Their fingers danced across interfaces both mechanical and biological, bridging the technological gap between their species. The crystal lattice won't stabilize, Kaida muttered, frustration evident in her voice as the test sample shattered for the fourth time. Fragments of iridescent material scattered across the workbench, each shard containing enough potential energy to power a small city. The quantum entanglement is breaking down at the subatomic level. Shamira's skin rippled with thoughtful blue patterns. Our crystals are grown, not constructed. They respond to evolutionary pressures and emotional resonance. She hesitated before adding, perhaps we are approaching this too mechanically. Captain Lindholm entered the laboratory, her face drawn with exhaustion. The outpost Helios had been evacuated, its personnel relocated to the Alliance cruiser Dauntless that now shadowed the Etherian vessel at a cautious distance. Alliance Command has responded, she announced without preamble. They're sending a scientific delegation, but not for another week. Will be cosmic history by then, Matteo said grimly, looking up from his calculations. The Scourge's acceleration rate puts it here in less than 60 hours now. They've also instructed us to withdraw to a safe distance, Lindholm continued, her voice tight. To observe and document, not intervene. A heavy silence fell over the laboratory. Kaida met the captain's gaze unflinchingly. I'm staying. As am I, Matteo added immediately. Dr. Okafor nodded her agreement. The xenobiological opportunities alone. This isn't a request for volunteers, Lindholm cut her off. It's a direct order from Alliance Command. Vraxtel entered silently, his tall form casting elongated shadows in the laboratory's shifting light. Your loyalty to your command structure is admirable, Captain Lindholm. But perhaps there is a compromise that satisfies both duty and conscience. The Etherian leader's skin pulsed with diplomatic amber as he outlined his suggestion. The Dauntless would withdraw as ordered, but a single shuttle could experience mechanical difficulties, forcing a small team to remain behind. Lindholm's expression remained impassive, but something shifted behind her eyes. "I couldn't possibly comment on such a blatant violation of orders," she said carefully. "Nor could I prevent Commander Ravik from performing routine maintenance on Shuttle Delta, which has been experiencing intermittent thruster malfunctions." The subtle agreement reached, they returned to the pressing problem of the crystal lattice. Hours passed in increasingly desperate experimentation until Dr. Okafor, who had been silently observing the Etherian crystal growth chambers, spoke up. "You said these respond to emotional resonance," she addressed Shaymira. "What exactly does that mean?" The alien scientist's skin flickered with embarrassment. "It is difficult to explain to non-telepathic species. Our technology bonds with us psychically. The crystals grow in response to our collective consciousness. Like a form of technological empathy," Amara suggested. "Precisely." Shaymira gestured to the ship around them. "The luminous harmony is not just named such, it literally harmonizes with its crew." Kaida set down her tools, a new idea forming. "Then we've been approaching this all wrong. We can't force the crystals to conform to our design, we need to evolve them toward it." What followed was unlike any engineering process in human experience. The Etherians gathered in concentric circles around the crystal growth chamber, their skin pulsing in synchronized patterns as they entered a communal meditative state. Kaida, Mateo, and Dr. Okafor joined them, awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence as Shaymira guided them through the process. "Visualize the lens," she instructed. "Not as a construct of mathematics and physics, but as a living entity with purpose and desire." Hours blended together in a strange communion of alien and human consciousness. Kaida felt herself sinking into a state beyond thought, where pure intention flowed from her mind into the crystalline matrix. The sensation was simultaneously intimate and vast, as though her consciousness had expanded beyond her physical form. When they finally emerged from the collective trance, the growth chamber contained something extraordinary, a perfectly formed lens of living crystal that pulsed with interior light, its structure impossibly complex yet harmonious. It didn't match Kaida's original design exactly, but somehow she knew it was better, an organic evolution of her concept. "It's beautiful," she whispered, afraid to break the spell of the moment. Zithlara, the ancient historian, approached the chamber with reverence. "In all our history, we have never merged our consciousness with another species in crystal binding. This artifact contains both Etherian and human essence now." Testing confirmed what they intuitively knew, the lens possessed properties that defied conventional physics. It didn't merely bend light but spacetime itself, creating microscopic folds in reality that could, theoretically, redirect the void scourge. "This is just a prototype," Kaida cautioned as excitement built among the team. "We need to scale this up by several orders of magnitude to affect the scourge." Coldren entered with grim news. "The scourge has accelerated again. We now have less than 40 hours. Vraxtol's skin darkened with determination. "Then we must begin full production immediately. Prepare the sacred growth chambers, all of them." Shaymira gasped. "The sacred chambers have not been used since the Dawn Age. They contain our oldest living crystals. And what purpose do they serve if our species is erased from existence?" Vraxtol countered. "Better they fulfill their purpose in our salvation than remain untouched relics in our extinction." As the Etherians hurried to prepare, Kaida caught Mateo's concerned expression. "What is it?" she asked. "The energy requirements for the full-scale lens," he said quietly. "Even with every power source on this ship, we're short by a factor of 10. We need something equivalent to a small star's output." Kaida felt her moment of triumph fading. They had solved one impossible problem only to face another equally daunting challenge. Coldren had overheard them. "There's one option," he said, his skin pulsing with reluctant gray. "The luminous harmony contains our species' final legacy, a stellar core fragment preserved from our homeworld sun before it was consumed." "That's your last connection to your home," Kaida said softly, understanding the magnitude of what he was suggesting. "Yes," the military commander acknowledged. Our most precious artifact, containing the quantum signature of our birth star. Using it would mean surrendering the last physical remnant of our origin. There must be another way, Kaida insisted. Vraxtol joined them, his ancient eyes reflecting the weight of leadership. What is a relic of the past compared to the possibility of a future? We will use the core fragment. His skin rippled with colors of profound sadness and determination. After all, what is survival if we are not willing to sacrifice who we were for who we might become? The great growth chambers of the luminous harmony pulsed with bioluminescent energy as the full-scale dimensional lens took form. Hundreds of Etherians stood in concentric circles, their skin shimmering with synchronized patterns as they guided the crystal's evolution with their collective consciousness. At the center of this alien communion stood Kaida, Mateo, and Dr. Okafor, their human minds linked to the Etherian collective through neural interfaces that Shamira had adapted for their physiology. The sensation was overwhelming, thousands of alien thoughts and emotions flowing through Kaida's consciousness like a vast, multidimensional river. She struggled to maintain her individual identity while contributing her technical expertise to the growing crystal matrix. Status report, Captain Lindholm's voice crackled through the comm system from the shuttle that now served as their command post. The Dauntless had withdrawn beyond the system's heliopause as ordered, officially abandoning them while surreptitiously maintaining long-range communication. Crystalline matrix at 63% completion, Mateo responded, his voice strained from the mental effort of the communion. Estimated time to completion, 14 hours. The Scourge will be here in 18, Coldren added grimly. We are cutting it extraordinarily close. Outside the ship, space itself seemed to darken as the Void Scourge approached, not a physical darkness but something more fundamental, as though reality itself was being unwritten at its edges. Long-range sensors showed entire star systems blinking out of existence as the cosmic aberration consumed everything in its path. The growth rate is slowing, Shamira reported, her skin pulsing with concern. The communion is fatiguing. Many of our people have never sustained mental linkage for this duration. Vraxtol moved through the circles, his skin radiating encouragement and strength to his people. Remember the worlds we have lost, his voice resonated through both spoken word and telepathic impression. Remember those who sacrificed so that we might have this final chance. The Etherian leader paused before Kaida, studying her with multifaceted eyes. You are experiencing dissonance, he observed. Your human mind was not evolved for communion. Kaida nodded, fighting waves of disorientation. It's like trying to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. I can't maintain my focus. Then do not try, Vraxtol suggested. Human consciousness is singular and intense, a focus beam rather than our distributed awareness. Use that difference to your advantage. Taking his advice, Kaida stopped fighting the alien thought patterns and instead channeled her concentrated human consciousness like a laser through the communion. The effect was immediate, the crystal growth accelerated around her focal point, the matrix restructuring with new precision. It's working! Shamira exclaimed, her skin flashing with excited patterns. The human cognitive framework is providing structural stability our distributed consciousness couldn't achieve alone. For 6 more hours they worked in this new harmony of complementary consciousness, the lens taking form as a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with interior light. But as they approached 80% completion, disaster struck. A sudden shudder ran through the ship, throwing several Etherians to the floor and disrupting the communion. Warning signals blared as the vessel's systems fluctuated wildly. We've entered the Scourge's outer influence field, Coldren reported, his skin pale with alarm. It's affecting our ship's biomatrix. Systems are destabilizing. Kaida rushed to the engineering console, scanning rapidly through the cascading failures. The ship's neural pathways are degrading. It's like the Scourge is unraveling the biological components of your technology first. Can we shield them? Mateo asked, already rerouting power to the ship's defensive systems. Not effectively, Shamira responded, her fingers dancing across the living interface. Our technology depends on quantum entanglement at the cellular level. The Scourge is specifically disrupting those patterns. Another violent shudder rocked the ship. In the growth chamber, fracture lines appeared across the partially formed lens, crystalline fragments breaking away from the main structure. No! Kaida cried, watching weeks of work literally cracking before her eyes. She rushed to the chamber, pressing her hands against its transparent surface as though she could physically hold the lens together through willpower alone. "The communion is breaking down," Vraxtol announced, his voice strained. "Our people cannot maintain the mental link under this disruption." Kaida's mind raced, searching for solutions as their last hope disintegrated. "The stellar core fragment," she said suddenly. "You said it contains the quantum signature of your homeworld's sun. Could we use it to stabilize the crystal matrix?" Ziflara, who had been silently observing from the periphery, stepped forward. "The core is not merely an energy source but a connection to our ancestral past. It resonates with the very foundation of our species' consciousness." "Exactly," Kaida nodded urgently. "If the scourge disrupts quantum entanglement, we need something with a stronger entanglement pattern to serve as an anchor, something so fundamentally connected to Etherian consciousness that the scourge can't easily unravel it." Vraxtol and the Etherian elders exchanged troubled glances, their skin shifting through colors of conflict and uncertainty. "Using the core this way would consume it entirely," Coldren objected. "Not just its energy but its very essence. It would be like erasing our origin point from history." "If we do nothing, the scourge will erase everything anyway," Kaida countered. "At least this way, your species' essence becomes part of the solution, woven into the very tool that saves you." After a moment of silent communion among the elders, Vraxtol nodded solemnly. "Bring forth the ancestor core." What followed was something between a sacred ritual and a complex technical procedure. The Etherians formed a new communion circle as a small group of elders emerged carrying a containment vessel that pulsed with golden light. Inside floated a fragment of stellar material unlike anything Kaida had ever seen, not plasma or matter but something that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. The deployment shuttle detached from the luminous harmony with a gentle shudder, its hybrid engines glowing with bioluminescent energy. Inside the cramped cockpit, Kaida and Vraxtol worked in tense silence, making final adjustments to the dimensional lens housed in the shuttle's cargo bay. The massive crystalline structure pulsed with interior light that seemed to bend reality around it, creating subtle distortions in space-time that made Kaida's eyes water if she looked directly at it. "Final trajectory calculated," she announced, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "We'll reach the optimal deployment point in 17 minutes. Through the view screen, the void scourge was visible not as an object but as an absence, a perfect darkness that consumed the stars behind it. It moved with terrible purpose, a cancer in reality itself that grew larger with each passing moment. "In my culture, we have a saying," Vraxtol said, breaking the silence. His skin pulsed with contemplative blue. "The void is not empty, it is filled with possibility." Kaida glanced at the alien leader, surprised by the philosophical turn. "That's beautiful. Humans tend to fear emptiness." "As do we," Vraxtol admitted. "But we have learned to see beyond the fear to the potential. When one path ends, countless others become possible." His multifaceted eyes studied her with ancient wisdom. "Your solution embodies this philosophy. Instead of fighting the void, you embrace and redirect it." The comm system crackled. "Deployment team, this is luminous harmony," Shamir's voice came through, tense with concern. "The scourge's acceleration has increased again. You have 12 minutes until optimal deployment, not 17. "Acknowledged," Kaida responded, adjusting their course. The shuttle's engines strained as she pushed them beyond recommended parameters. "We'll make it." In the cargo bay, warning indicators flashed as the lens responded to their proximity to the scourge. The crystalline structure's pulsations grew more erratic, internal light patterns shifting through impossible colors. "The lens is destabilizing," Vraxtol reported, his upper limbs dancing across the alien controls. "The scourge's influence is affecting its quantum structure sooner than anticipated." Kaida abandoned the pilot's station, moving to the engineering console. "We need to reinforce the central matrix. If it collapses before deployment." She left the thought unfinished. They both knew what failure meant, not just for them, but for the remaining Etherians and potentially countless other species in the scourge's path. Working frantically, Kaida rerouted power from non-essential systems to strengthen the containment field around the lens. The temperature in the shuttle dropped as life support was reduced to minimum levels. Their breath began to fog in the increasingly cold air. 7 minutes to optimal deployment, Mateo's voice came through the comm. The lens won't last that long, Kaida responded grimly. Its coherence is failing. We need to deploy earlier. Negative, came Dr. Okafor's immediate response. Your calculations were specific. If you deploy too early, the space-time fold won't properly redirect the scourge. Vraxtel studied the deteriorating lens, his skin shifting to thoughtful purple. What if we stabilize it with a direct neural link? Kaida looked up sharply. You mean like the communion during its creation? Out here? A simplified version, the Etherian clarified. Just you and I, focused on the core matrix. That could work, Kaida admitted, running calculations in her head. But the neural feedback this close to the scourge could be dangerous. More dangerous than certain erasure from existence? Vraxtel's skin flickered with what Kaida had come to recognize as Etherian humor, a brief iridescent pattern across otherwise serious coloration. Without waiting for further discussion, the alien leader removed a neural interface from his pack, similar to the ones they'd used during the Crystal Communion but smaller, more focused. He offered one to Kaida. This will link our consciousness directly. It is more intimate than the group communion, he warned. There will be no barriers between our minds. Kaida hesitated only briefly before accepting the device. For the record, humans usually get to know each other a bit better before sharing consciousness. The joke fell flat as she placed the interface against her temple. Immediately, her perception expanded beyond human limitations. She felt Vraxtel's ancient mind merging with hers, not erasing her identity but complementing it. His thousands of years of accumulated knowledge blended with her human intuition and creativity, forming something greater than either alone. Together, their merged consciousness reached out to the lens, reinforcing its quantum structure through pure will and focused intention. Where the crystal matrix had begun to unravel, they rewove its patterns. Where fractures had formed, they sealed them with shared determination. 5 minutes to deployment point, came a distant voice through what seemed like layers of reality. Within their shared consciousness, Kaida and Vraxtel made a discovery that sent ripples of excitement through their merged mind. The lens wasn't simply deteriorating, it was evolving, responding to the scourge's proximity by developing new, unexpected properties. It's not failing, Kaida communicated without words. It's adapting. Yes, Vraxtel's thoughts resonated with wonder. It's becoming something beyond our original design. Together, they redirected their efforts from stabilization to guidance, helping the lens evolve along optimal pathways. The crystalline structure pulsed with renewed purpose, its interior light organizing into complex, fractal patterns that somehow made perfect sense to their merged consciousness. 2 minutes to deployment, the distant voice announced, barely penetrating their shared focus. A sudden realization formed in their merged mind: the lens had become more than a tool. Through the infusion of the ancestor core and their continued communion, it had developed a form of proto-consciousness, not self-aware, but responsive in ways neither had anticipated. It needs a final component, Vraxtel's thoughts conveyed. A guiding intelligence during the crucial moment of activation. Understanding dawned with terrible clarity. Someone would need to maintain neural connection with the lens after deployment, to remain with it as it faced the scourge. I'll do it, Kaida thought immediately. No, came Vraxtel's firm response. My people. My responsibility. Your people need you to lead them afterward, Kaida countered. I'm expendable. No life is expendable, Vraxtel's consciousness rippled with emotion. But you are right that my people need continuity of leadership. Before Kaida could respond, the shuttle shuddered violently. Through their merged awareness, they sensed the scourge's outer influence field brushing against their shields. Deployment point reached, announced Shemira's distant voice. Release the lens now. With a thought, they activated the deployment sequence. The shuttle's cargo bay opened to the vacuum of space, magnetic clamps releasing the massive crystalline structure. The lens drifted forward, its interior light now pulsing in perfect harmony with their joint consciousness. Neural link stable, Vraxtel communicated. Return to the ship, Kaida Nakamura. I will guide the lens. As the vessel was connected to the growth chamber, Zithlara began a melodic chant that resonated through the ship. The other Etherians joined, their voices and skin patterns synchronizing into a harmonic whole that somehow translated directly into Kaida's mind as a story, the history of the Etherian people from their first awakening to consciousness among the crystal forests of their lost homeworld. The ancestor core pulsed in rhythm with the chant, its golden energy flowing into the fractured lens. Where the energy touched, broken crystal paths reconnected, not as they were before but in new, more complex patterns. The lens was not merely being repaired but reborn, infused with the quintessence of Etherian civilization. "It's working," Dr. Okafor whispered in awe, her scientific detachment momentarily forgotten. But their success came with visible cost. With each pulse of energy, the ancestor core diminished, its brilliant golden light fading incrementally. The Etherians' chant took on a mournful quality, a requiem for the last physical connection to their origin. As the final traces of the core dissolved into the lens, Vraxtel's skin displayed colors Kaida had never seen before, patterns so complex and profound that her human eyes could barely process them. "It is done," the Etherian leader said simply. "Our past now lives only in memory." The completed lens hung in the chamber, pulsing with a light that seemed to bend reality around it, golden at its core but fracturing into impossible colors at its edges. It was simultaneously the most beautiful and most alien thing Kaida had ever seen. "Will it work?" Captain Lindholm asked through the comm, breaking the solemn moment. Kaida studied the readouts, hope and doubt warring within her. "Theoretically, yes. But there's no way to test it without deploying it against the actual scourge. Which arrives in less than 6 hours, Coldren reminded them grimly. And we still haven't solved the deployment problem. The lens must be positioned at the precise focal point between our ship and the scourge's approach vector. Meaning someone has to take it out there, Matteo said quietly. Into the direct path of the scourge. The implication hung heavy in the air. Such a mission would almost certainly be one way. Whoever deployed the lens would have mere seconds to retreat before the scourge's influence field engulfed them completely. "I'll do it," Kaida said before she could second-guess herself. "It's my design. I should be the one to deploy it." "No," Vraxtel countered immediately. "This is our battle, our responsibility." With respect, Kaida replied, "Human neural patterns are less susceptible to the scourge's disruption. I'll have more time to make final adjustments before withdrawing." As they argued, the ship shuddered again, more violently this time. The lights flickered as the scourge's influence grew stronger. "We're out of time for debate," Captain Lindholm cut in sharply. "Nakamura, Vraxtel, prepare the deployment shuttle. The rest of us will coordinate from here and be ready for immediate extraction when, this works." As Kaida left to prepare, Shaymira caught her arm, the Etherian's skin glowing with a complex pattern of concern and gratitude. "Your species calls this courage," she said softly. "Ours calls it dancing with the void. May your steps be sure, Kaida Nakamura." "No!" Kaida fought to maintain connection as Vraxtel began severing their shared consciousness. "There must be another way." The Etherian's mind gently but firmly pushed her awareness back toward her own body. "There is no other way, and no time for debate. My final gift to my people will be this moment." As their consciousness separated, Vraxtel shared one last thought, not in words but in pure emotion, gratitude, respect, and a profound sense of rightness in this final act of service. Kaida gasped as her mind snapped back to her physical body. She found herself alone in the shuttle's cockpit, emergency indicators blaring around her. Through the view screen, she saw Vraxtel's environmental suit drifting alongside the lens, connected by a tether of glowing energy. "No!" she screamed, lunging for the controls. "Harmony, we need emergency retrieval. Vraxtel has left the shuttle." "Too late," came Coldren's grim response. "The scourge's influence field has expanded. Neither you nor Vraxtel can remain safely. Return immediately, Engineer Nakamura." With agonizing reluctance, Kaida engaged the engines, steering the shuttle away from the deployment zone. Through the rear viewport, she watched Vraxtel's distant figure guiding the lens into its final position, a lone sentinel facing cosmic oblivion. "The lens is activating," reported Shaymira, her voice thick with emotion. "Space-time distortion forming, it's working. The scourge's advance is bending around the focal point." On the view screen, Kaida watched as reality itself seemed to fold around the lens. The void scourge, that implacable consumer of existence, began to curve away from its original trajectory, its perfect darkness distorting as it followed the path of least resistance around the lens's influence. "It's redirecting back on itself," Dr. Okafor reported with awe. "The scourge is literally consuming its own tail." For one brief, eternal moment, Kaida felt Vraxtol's consciousness touch hers one final time, a farewell filled with satisfaction and peace. Then the lens flared with blinding light as the scourge closed around it, consuming both the crystalline structure and its Etherian guide in a final flash of impossible colors. When the light faded, where the void scourge had been there was now nothing. Not the unnatural absence of the scourge, but simply empty space, peaceful and ordinary. Stars shone undisturbed in the distance. "It's gone," Mateo whispered through the calm. "The scourge is completely gone." As Kaida guided the shuttle back toward the luminous harmony, she felt hollow with grief yet filled with wonder. They had succeeded beyond all reasonable hope, but at a cost she wasn't sure she could bear. "Vraxtol," she whispered to the empty space behind her. "Your void is indeed filled with possibility." The shuttle docked with the luminous harmony in perfect silence. No celebratory announcements marked Kaida's return, no welcoming committee awaited in the docking bay. Only Shamira stood there, her skin a somber gray-blue that required no translation. The Etherians were in mourning. Kaida stumbled from the shuttle, exhaustion and grief making her movements clumsy. Shamira caught her before she could fall, the alien's touch surprisingly gentle despite her crystalline-infused biology. "He knew," Kaida whispered, her voice raw. "From the beginning, Vraxtol knew someone would have to stay with the lens." "Yes," Shamira acknowledged, her skin rippling with mournful patterns. "Our genetic memory contains the understanding that great change requires great sacrifice. Vraxtol carried the memories of 10,000 generations. He understood the price of survival better than any of us." The ship hummed around them, its living systems reflecting the collective grief of its inhabitants. The corridors pulsed with subdued indigo light as Shamira led Kaida to the central chamber where the remaining Etherian leadership had gathered. Koldren stood at the center, his military bearing now tempered with the gravity of unexpected authority. His skin displayed the formal patterns of leadership, similar to what Vraxtol had worn, but subtly different, reflecting his own personality and approach. "Engineer Nakamura," he greeted her formally. "The Etherian people owe you a debt beyond measurement." "I failed," Kaida responded, the words bitter in her mouth. "Vraxtol is gone." "He is not gone," corrected Ziflara, the ancient historian. "He is transformed." "There is a difference." The elderly Etherian approached, carrying a small crystalline container that pulsed with gentle light. "Before Vraxtol left with you, he entrusted me with this, a memory crystal containing his final communion." She placed the container in Kaida's hands. Inside, a shard of crystal similar to the lens material glowed with interior patterns that shifted and changed as she watched. "I don't understand," Kaida said, staring at the crystal. "It contains the essence of his consciousness," Ziflara explained. "Not his complete being, but the core of his knowledge and wisdom. His final gift to both our peoples." Before Kaida could respond, Captain Lindholm's voice came over the comm system. "Shuttle approaching from the Dauntless. Commander Ravik reports the Alliance Science Division has reviewed our sensor data and is quite interested in what we've accomplished." A ripple of something like amusement passed through the Etherian's skin patterns, the first positive emotion Kaida had seen since her return. "How diplomatically phrased," Koldren remarked. "I imagine quite interested understates their reaction considerably." "The Admiral used several words I won't repeat," Lindholm confirmed, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "But the end result is that instead of court-martials, we're looking at commendations. The Alliance has officially recognized the Void Scourge as an existential threat that justified our actions." "And the Etherian people?" Shamira asked cautiously. "What is our status?" A pause before Lindholm responded. "The Alliance Council has granted provisional refugee status with expedited consideration for full membership. They're eager to learn more about your crystal technology." "I imagine they are." Koldren's skin flickered with cautious optimism. "Perhaps this alliance may benefit both our peoples after all." As the practical matters of survival and political recognition were discussed around her, Kaida found herself unable to focus. The memory crystal in her hand seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, drawing her attention inward. Without conscious decision, she placed it against her temple, where the neural interface had connected her to Vraxtol during their shared consciousness. The world dissolved around her as her mind expanded beyond human limitation once again. Not a full communion like before, but a glimpse of Vraxtol's final thoughts and intentions. She saw his decision to sacrifice himself not as a tragedy but as a completion, the fulfillment of a purpose he had been preparing for throughout his long life. More surprisingly, she saw his vision for what would follow, humans and Etherians working together, each species complementing the other's strengths and compensating for their weaknesses. He had seen in their brief mental connection the potential for something revolutionary, a true symbiosis of disparate evolutionary paths. When Kaida's awareness returned to the present, she found the Etherians watching her with knowing expressions. Zithlara nodded slowly, her ancient eyes reflecting understanding. "You have received his vision," the historian stated simply. "Yes," Kaida confirmed, still processing the experience. "He believed our species could achieve something remarkable together. And so we shall," declared Coldren. "Beginning with the technology that saved us." In the days that followed, as the Dauntless escorted the luminous Harmony toward Alliance space, Kaida worked closely with Shamira and the Etherian engineers to document the dimensional lens technology. Though the original lens had been consumed in redirecting the Scourge, the principles behind it remained, a revolutionary approach to manipulating spacetime that combined Etherian crystal technology with human theoretical frameworks. The applications extend far beyond defense, Matteo observed as they reviewed the schematics. This could revolutionize space travel, communication, even energy production. Dr. Okafor nodded enthusiastically. "The biological components alone represent a paradigm shift in our understanding of living technology. The potential medical applications are staggering." Yet despite the excitement of scientific breakthrough and the promise of a bright future for both species, Kaida found herself drawn repeatedly to the observation deck, staring out at the stars with an inexplicable sense of incompletion. Shamira found her there the night before they were due to reach the Alliance Gateway Station. The Etherian scientist's skin glowed softly in the darkened deck, patterns of concern and understanding flowing across her translucent surface. "You are troubled," she stated, not a question but an observation. Kaida sighed. "We destroyed the Scourge, saved your people, potentially revolutionized multiple fields of science. I should feel triumphant. Yet you feel something is unfinished," Shamira completed the thought. Her skin shifted to a curious amber. "May I show you something?" The Etherian led Kaida to a section of the ship she hadn't visited before, a small, circular chamber whose walls were composed entirely of living crystal. As they entered, the crystal responded to Shamira's presence, illuminating with gentle patterns that reminded Kaida of Earth's aurora borealis. "This is a communion chamber," Shamira explained. "A place for reflection and connection." In the center of the room floated a small fragment of crystal, similar to Vraxtol's memory crystal but subtly different, its interior patterns more chaotic, less defined. "What is it?" Kaida asked, drawn to the floating fragment. "We don't know precisely," Shamira admitted. "It appeared in our sensor arrays after the Scourge disappeared, a quantum echo from the event horizon of the space-time fold." Kaida approached cautiously, something in the crystal's patterns triggering a sense of recognition she couldn't quite place. "It feels familiar somehow." "We thought you might say that." Shamira's skin flickered with scientific curiosity. "Our preliminary analysis suggests it contains quantum signatures from both the lens and the Scourge itself. And perhaps, something else." Without waiting for permission, Kaida reached out and touched the floating fragment. Immediately, her consciousness expanded, not into a communion with another mind but into something vaster and more alien, a glimpse of reality from outside normal space-time. In that moment of connection, she understood, the Void Scourge hadn't been destroyed but transformed. In redirecting it back upon itself, the lens had created a closed temporal loop, a self-contained pocket of non-existence that now existed adjacent to normal space rather than consuming it. And within that impossible paradox, something new was forming, neither Scourge nor lens but a hybrid entity with qualities of both. And somehow, impossibly, she sensed Fraxtel's consciousness within that emerging pattern, not erased but evolved into something beyond normal comprehension. Not alive in any conventional sense, but not gone either. Transformed, as Zithlara had said. When Kaida withdrew her hand, she found her face wet with tears she hadn't realized she was shedding. Shaymira waited patiently, her skin pulsing with gentle support. "He's still out there," Kaida whispered. Not as he was, but continuing. "Yes," the Etherian scientist confirmed. "We suspected as much. The void is not empty. It is filled with possibility," Kaida completed the saying, a smile breaking through her tears. "What happens now? To this fragment, I mean." Shaymira's skin shifted to colors of determination and purpose. "That, I believe, is for you to decide. You were connected to both Fraxtel and the lens at the moment of transformation. This fragment responds to you more strongly than to any of us." Kaida stared at the floating crystal, possibilities unfolding in her mind. Not an ending after all, but a beginning, a new path of discovery that would unite human and Etherian science in ways neither species had imagined. "I think," she said slowly, "we're going to need a research team." 3 years later, the Nakamura Vraxtel Institute of Dimensional Physics occupied a sprawling complex on Nevaeh Station, the newly constructed habitat orbiting the neutron star that the Etherians had chosen as their adopted home. The Institute's central dome featured a unique architecture that blended human and Etherian design philosophies, clean geometric lines intersecting with organic crystal growths that responded to the emotional states of those within. Kaida stood at the observation window of her laboratory, watching the neutron star's radiation interact with the station's dimensional shields, technology derived from the lens that had saved the Etherian species. The shields didn't simply block the deadly radiation but redirected it, harvesting its energy in a perpetual cycle that powered the entire station. "The latest test results are promising," announced Shaymira as she entered the laboratory. 3 years of working alongside humans had influenced the Etherian scientist's mannerisms. She now used verbal communication more frequently, though her skin still pulsed with expressive patterns that added layers of nuance to her words. "The dimensional pocket has stabilized at 97% coherence." Kaida turned from the window, unable to suppress her excitement. 97? That's well above our theoretical threshold. Indeed. Shaymira's skin rippled with scientific satisfaction as she projected a holographic model of their experiment. "The fragment has established a self-sustaining loop, just as you predicted. It's creating a stable pocket dimension with properties of both normal space and whatever the scourge was." In the center of Shaymira's projection floated a representation of what they now called the Nexus, the evolved form of the crystal fragment recovered after the scourge's transformation. Over the years, it had grown from microscopic size to nearly 2 meters in diameter, developing increasingly complex internal structures as it absorbed energy from specialized crystal matrices they had designed. Dr. Amara Okafor entered the laboratory, accompanied by a delegation of Alliance scientists. After 3 years as the Institute's chief xenobiologist, Amara moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to bridging the gap between human and alien perspectives. "Our guests are here for the demonstration," she announced, her expression professional but unable to hide her excitement. "If you're ready, Director Nakamura." Kaida nodded, smoothing her hands over her formal institute uniform. Though she had never sought leadership, the joint human-Etherian research team had unanimously selected her as their director, a position she had accepted with reluctance but grown into with determined purpose. "Let's not keep them waiting," she agreed, leading the way to the Institute's central chamber. The massive circular room that housed the Nexus had been designed specifically for this purpose, its walls lined with specialized crystal arrays that both contained and nurtured the growing dimensional anomaly. In the 3 years since its discovery, the Nexus had become the focus of the most advanced research in the Alliance, promising breakthroughs in fields ranging from transportation to energy production to communication. As the delegation entered, Kaida caught sight of a familiar face, Captain Lindholm, now Admiral Lindholm, her uniform adorned with the insignia of the Alliance Science Division. The two women exchanged nods of respect. Their relationship had evolved from reluctant conspirators to trusted colleagues, bound by the shared experience of facing the Void Scourge. "Admiral," Kaida greeted her formally. "Thank you for coming personally." "I wouldn't miss it," Lindholm replied with a rare smile. The Alliance Council is very interested in your progress, especially given the resource allocation they've approved. The unspoken pressure behind those words was clear, but Kaida had grown accustomed to political realities. I believe today's demonstration will justify their investment many times over. At the center of the chamber, the Nexus pulsed with interior light that seemed to bend reality around it, similar to the original lens but more controlled, more refined. Its surface displayed complex fractal patterns that shifted and evolved constantly, never repeating yet maintaining a strange harmony that many found mesmerizing. Matteo Valles, now the Institute's chief engineer, approached from the control station. All systems nominal, he reported. The dimensional matrices are aligned and stable. Excellent, Kaida nodded. Let's proceed with the demonstration. As the assembled dignitaries took their positions around the observation ring, Kaida stepped onto the central platform beside the Nexus. Though the Institute staff had urged her to allow someone else to conduct this first official test, she had insisted. No one else had the same connection to the Nexus, a connection that went beyond scientific understanding to something more personal. Distinguished representatives of the Alliance, she began, her voice steady despite her inner nervousness. What you are about to witness represents the culmination of 3 years of collaborative research between human and Etherian scientists. The Nexus is not merely a technological achievement but a symbol of what our species can accomplish together. She gestured to the pulsing crystal structure beside her. This entity contains properties of both normal spacetime and what we once called the Void Scourge, a cosmic phenomenon that nearly eradicated the Etherian species. Through their sacrifice and wisdom, that destructive force was transformed into something new, something with the potential to revolutionize our understanding of dimensional physics. Kaida nodded to Matteo, who initiated the test sequence. The crystal arrays lining the walls began to pulse in synchronized patterns, channeling energy toward the Nexus. The fractal patterns on its surface accelerated, flowing like liquid light across its crystalline facets. The Nexus creates a stable pocket dimension, a space that exists adjacent to our reality but operates under different physical laws, Kaida explained as the demonstration proceeded. Today, we will demonstrate its practical application in instantaneous matter transmission. On cue, Shaymira activated a secondary control panel. A small platform across the chamber illuminated, holding a simple metal sphere inscribed with measurement markings. The Alliance representatives leaned forward, their scientific curiosity overcoming political reserve. The target object is located 20 meters from the Nexus in normal space, Kaida continued. We will transmit it through the pocket dimension in. Before she could complete her explanation, the Nexus pulsed with sudden intensity. Unexpected patterns cascaded across its surface, and the air around it seemed to ripple like heat waves over desert sand. Energy spike! Matteo called out, his fingers dancing across his controls. Something's happening that's not in the test protocol. Kaida should have retreated to safety. Protocol demanded it. But instead, she found herself stepping closer to the Nexus, drawn by an inexplicable certainty that this wasn't a malfunction but a communication. Kaida, get back! Admiral Lindholm shouted, but her voice seemed distant, unimportant. As Kaida reached toward the pulsing crystal, its surface rippled like water. A tendril of light extended toward her, not threatening but inviting. Without hesitation, she touched it. The world dissolved around her as her consciousness expanded beyond physical limitation. She found herself in a space that was neither material nor void but something between, a realm of pure pattern and potential. And she was not alone. Kaida Nakamura. The thought voice was both familiar and alien, recognizable despite its transformation. You have done well. Vraxtol, she asked, though not with physical words. Is it really you? What remains of me? What has evolved beyond what I was? The presence that had once been the Etherian leader surrounded her like a gentle mist of consciousness. I have watched your work. The time has come for the next step. I don't understand, Kaida's thoughts responded. We're still learning the basic principles of the Nexus. The Nexus is more than a tool. It is a gateway. Images flowed into Kaida's mind, vast, incomprehensible vistas of possibility, dimensions beyond the 3 spatial and 1 temporal that humans comprehended. What you call the Void Scourge was not a natural phenomenon but a reaction, a dimensional immune response to violations of cosmic boundaries. Understanding bloomed in Kaida's expanded consciousness. Someone was experimenting with dimensional physics. They tore the membrane between realities. Yes. An ancient civilization, long vanished. Their mistake created the scourge, a self-propagating wound in reality that sought to cauterize itself by consuming everything it touched. But we redirected it, Kaida recalled. Folded it back on itself. And in doing so, created something new, not destruction but transformation. The Nexus is not merely a pocket dimension but a seed of renewal. The beginning of healing between realities. The implications were staggering. Kaida felt her consciousness struggling to contain concepts beyond human understanding. Why show me this now? We're only beginning to grasp the technology. Because others have detected your work. Vraxtol's presence seemed to darken with concern. Beyond your reality, there are those who seek dimensional gateways for their own purposes. The Nexus calls to them across the boundaries. Are we in danger? Alarm rippled through Kaida's thoughts. Not immediately. But you must understand the true nature of what you have helped create before you proceed further. The Nexus is not merely a scientific breakthrough but a cosmic responsibility. Before Kaida could respond, the connection began to fade. The vast expanse of multidimensional awareness contracted, drawing her back toward normal consciousness. We will speak again, Vraxtol's thought voice promised as it receded. You have brought two species together in common purpose. Soon, you may need to do the same for entire dimensions. Reality reasserted itself with jarring suddenness. Kaida found herself standing before the Nexus, her hand still extended toward its surface. Around her, the Institute staff and Alliance representatives stood frozen in confusion and concern. According to the chronometer on the wall, less than 3 seconds had passed. Director Nakamura? Admiral Lindholm's voice broke the silence. Are you all right? Kaida lowered her hand slowly, her mind still reeling from the experience. Yes, I'm fine. Just a unexpected resonance effect. The energy signature has stabilized, Matteo reported, his expression a mixture of scientific curiosity and personal concern. But that wasn't in any of our projections. No, Kaida agreed quietly. It wasn't. She turned to face the assembled dignitaries, knowing she couldn't possibly explain what had just occurred, not yet, perhaps not ever completely. Some experiences transcended conventional language, existing in the realm between science and something akin to mysticism. Distinguished representatives, she addressed them formally, what you just witnessed was not part of our planned demonstration, but it illustrates an important truth about the Nexus. This technology isn't merely a tool we've created, it's an evolving system that we are learning to work with rather than control completely. She gestured to the now stabilized crystal structure. The Nexus represents more than instant transportation or unlimited energy. It offers us a glimpse of realities beyond our own, dimensions of existence we've only begun to comprehend. Admiral Lindholm stepped forward, her expression cautious but intrigued. Are you suggesting the Nexus is sentient?